Hello everyone, we're here today for part 2 of our series on preparation for your life after you complete your PharmD. So today's topic is going to be looking at the 6 months post-graduation and what you should really be doing to set up yourself for success in both personal life and in your professional career, which you'll be obviously just beginning at this point. The last video focused heavily on test preparation, so if you haven't checked that out already, take a look at that. There's a lot of great tips and tricks on best ways to prepare for the NAPLEX and the MPJE. By no means is it an all-inclusive list, but it's a good starting point and a good place to kind of guide you in the right direction to make sure that you are preparing how you need to prepare. So today's video is going to focus a little bit more on test preparation, just kind of touching on that. Interviewing and securing your first job, or in a lot of your cases, residencies. Finding your connections both in the world of pharmacy and in your personal life, both of which are equally as important. And setting yourself up for long-term success, again, both in your career and in your personal life. Because we've always been told over the years that you're going to be a pharmacist, this is going to be what you're going to be doing, but your personal life is even more important than whatever you decide to do for your career. So making sure that you're happy with whatever decisions you're making, both professionally and personally. Now looking at test preparation, like I said, my previous video covered this in great detail, so today we're going to kind of just do like a 30,000 foot view of it. But big thing with test preparation is going to be making sure that you're setting aside enough time for yourself to prepare for the NAPLEX and the MPJE if you need to take the MPJE. And just to give you a kind of a background on how I get all of these statistics and everything in here, I collaborate with 7 different pharmacists that help me make these videos. Just so it's not my opinion, it's a collaboration of multiple different people and tips and tricks that worked well for them. So I have a pharmacist that works a retail chain in Ohio. I have several hospital-based pharmacists in the state of Ohio. I have a Tennessee-based pharmacist that's working in a hospital. Myself, I'm a retail pharmacist in the state of Pennsylvania, and then I have a regional pharmacy leader and a pharmacy manager that I collaborate with for a retail chain in Pennsylvania that help to kind of guide us in the right direction to make sure that everything in these videos is as informational as possible. So big thing is, like I said, setting aside enough time to prepare for the NAPLEX and the MPJE. Biggest thing to remember is pass rates do drop significantly 6 months post-graduation. So 30 to 60 days is really that sweet spot in taking the exams. 2 reasons for that. You obviously want to get licensed as quickly as you can because then you can get out and start making money, which is the important part of this. Second part of it is you want to make sure you're giving yourself that time to prepare, but not too much time where it's basically eating up your entire life. It's something that for a month or 2 is going to be a solid preparation period, and then after that you can kind of chill, start working your job, and then it becomes a little bit easier for you. So most students are going to prepare about 150 to 200 hours for the NAPLEX. Generally, the recommendation is going to be to study no more than 8 hours a day and allowing yourself adequate study breaks throughout there. So go for an hour, take a 10-minute break. At lunchtime, sit down, close your books, take a half an hour lunch break, and just don't think about pharmacy for a little bit. Watch some YouTube, whatever you do to unwind, and then go back at it after lunch. Generally, if you break these 150 to 200 or more hours up over about 4 to 6 weeks, that's going to be the sweet spot, and that's going to allow you to prepare well and have a very high chance of succeeding on the first time you take the NAPLEX. Obviously, it's very beneficial if you do start earlier and dedicate, an hour or 2 a day for months ahead of time, but that 150 to 200 is going to be in those weeks right before you take the exam. A lot of people say the MPJE is a lot easier. I know I prepared a lot less for the MPJE. I was probably in maybe that 60-hour neighborhood, but 50 to 75 hours is what I'm seeing most pharmacists are preparing for their MPJE. I personally thought the MPJE was a little bit harder than the NAPLEX. I was fortunate that I was able to pass both of them on my first attempt, but I would say just don't kind of brush off the MPJE. It is a difficult exam, and you just want to make sure that you are prepared. I always say it's better to be over-prepared than be under-prepared for these exams. And definitely check out my last video if you have questions on this topic. Now we're going to look at interviewing. So if you already have a residency or you've been interning with a retail chain or something along those general lines, this part's going to be a lot easier because you kind of already have that career path set up for you. If you don't fall into that situation, it's no problem at all. I wasn't in that situation and it worked out for me. But you want to make sure that you do have an updated CV and resume that reflects your interests and your clinical rotations. So if you had a fantastic oncology rotation through a highly rated cancer center, that's something you definitely want on your CV, especially if you're planning on applying for a job in an oncology field or PGY2 specializing in oncology pharmacy. It's going to be something that could potentially set you apart from someone else that's applying for that same position. Another big thing is to be confident, but not too confident. In these interviews, they're going to ask you some difficult questions. And if you respond, I don't know to every question, that doesn't look good for you. But at the same time, making up an answer that's completely wrong, it's going to look even worse. So there's nothing wrong with admitting that you don't know the answer for something, but I would always follow that up with, that's an area I'm not as strong in, but it's an area that I know I need to do more research in and I need to improve in, and that's an area that I'm looking to grow in. Something along those general lines, just to show them that you are dedicated, but you're not, you obviously don't know everything. You're a newly licensed pharmacist, and even after you've been working for 40 years, you're still not going to know everything. It's an evolving field. Come prepared to ask questions, but kind of going off of this, a great question is, why did you choose to work for Ohio Health or wherever you're interviewing? Because then the person gets to talk about themselves. And as we all know, we love to talk about ourselves. So it gives them a great opportunity, and it makes a better connection with the person that's interviewing you. So kind of a little bit of an off topic here. My father, back probably 30 years ago, was applying for a job at US Steel. He's talking with the guy that was interviewing him, and my dad mentioned that he's an Eagle Scout, which is through Boy Scouts. The guy that was interviewing him was also an Eagle Scout. They spent the next 30 minutes talking about Boy Scouts, hardly even talked about the job, and 2 days later he got a job offer with this company. That's not going to be the case for most people, but it just shows how one small connection can be something that makes all the difference. And make sure you are doing some research before you do come in. If there's information on the company's website or something about them, you integrate that into your interview, it shows that you are dedicated to the position and you do truly want to succeed in the job. Now, looking at post-interview etiquette, even if it's a position that you're not necessarily interested in or something that was maybe like a practice interview, you want to communicate with the person that interviewed you 1 to 2 days after the interview. And there's really 2 reasons for that. You want to show that you're respecting that person's time. They obviously took time out of their day to interview you and set up a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting or whatever it was. So it is a big time commitment, and especially if they're interviewing 10, 15, 20 people, it can suck up a lot of their time. So just sending that email is definitely going to potentially set you apart, and it also shows that you have respect for that person. Second aspect of that is going to be keeping connections. Even if they don't offer you a position or if you turn down the position, it shows that as long as you still have a positive relationship with that individual, maybe down the road you'll work for that organization or that company, and that one follow-up email could be that one thing that sets you apart in the future. And big thing to remember too is if you get an offer from a job, you don't have to take it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with turning down an offer. On the contrary, if you have 5 job offers and you turn down all 5 of them, at some point you kind of have to settle into a position. Nothing wrong with turning down an offer or two if it's not a great place for you to work, but at some point you obviously need to make sure you are integrating into a job so you can get started. Now looking at your first job or your residency. First impressions are critical. There's a lot of statistics out there showing that up to 75% of what people think of you are based on their first interaction with you. So coming in professionally dressed, having a positive attitude, being willing to socialize with people goes a really long way. There's multiple aspects to that, and it's not necessarily even just in your professional interactions with them. It can be even just while you're sitting around at the lunch table, you're talking to them about if they saw the Browns game this weekend. Something along those lines that forms a personal connection. And your first job can likely set a good stage for your long-term career path. So I have a lot of friends that are working in different hospital chains for residencies, and of which several of them are going to accept jobs with those companies, not even at the same hospital that they were doing their residencies at, but at a different hospital in the chain. So it allows for positive connections that are going to leave necessarily just the building that you're in and expand out to the entire organization you're with. And make sure you're being humble but staying assertive. You're going to come into this position and you're not going to know everything, and that's perfectly fine. But you do want to make sure that you're not necessarily getting pushed around and picking up all the jobs that no one else wants to do. Being the low person on the totem pole, you will be doing some of that without a doubt, but don't let people take advantage of you. At the same time, a lot of people come in with that PharmD and they're thinking to themselves, hey, I'm great in this position and I'm going to do super well. But big thing to remember is there are people that are in that position, like technicians, that have been there for 15, 20 years and can be great assets to you. Now, finding your connections. I personally think that this is one of the biggest aspects of pharmacy. There can be things such as just a really, really small interaction that can have a lasting impact on your life. So a prime example of this is back probably about 10 years ago, I was refereeing under 12 soccer at a small community club around here. And one of the soccer coaches for one of the teams that I do like every other weekend or something, I knew she was a pharmacist, and we had been friendly over the years and everything. Well, fast forward to my first couple weeks on my new job, and she comes in to fill her prescriptions. I'm talking to her. She obviously finds out I'm a pharmacist. She works at Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh, and immediately said, hey, are you looking for a job? Because if so, I can get you into Children's. I can get you a staff pharmacist role there, and I will put a great word with our managers there. So one tiny interaction of refereeing her kids in soccer 10 years ago led to a potential job, which I didn't end up taking, but it's still a great connection, and it shows the importance of having those connections with different individuals. Along on those same lines is having a good support system. This goes both for career and personal life. So looking at the career side of things, there is going to be technicians, other pharmacists, your pharmacy leaders for your hospital or retail chain that are going to be people that you can rely on. So in my case here, I have the first pharmacist that I worked under whenever I was an intern briefly in Pennsylvania. Her name was Sam. Absolutely fantastic pharmacist. She used to be one of the regional leaders for the chain I work for. And she is someone that I still to this day will call occasionally whenever I have an issue on something. I actually called her last week because I was at a brand new store, which actually is now the store I work at long term, and the printer was completely out of toner, and we had no more toner cartridges. And I basically was like, what am I going to do? I have to print out these drug monographs for people. So she was able to give me the phone number of who I called. They sent it to me the same day. It was no issue at all. But if I didn't have that connection, I would have been going part of the day with no way to print out any of my papers, and I can't check any scripts. So just things like that. Another person I heavily rely on is an individual named Dave. He's a pharmacy manager for the same chain I'm with. He is one of the best pharmacists I've ever met. I will contact him whenever I have issues on anything, or even just advice like on a situation. I have a script where I'm like, I'm not 100% on what to do on this, and just getting another perspective on it. Your personal life's just as important in this aspect. You need to make sure you have that solid support system of people around you, whether it's your family, your friends, or whoever, that are going to be people that you can vent to or help you out in your personal struggles in life, because we all have them and we need those people to be able to help us out. And last thing is, don't be afraid to ask questions, which I already touched on. Contrary to popular belief, you don't know everything, and you need to be willing to have the people that do know the answers to the questions help you out, because it can make your life a lot easier. Now looking at long-term success. There's a multi-layer to this. So we're going to look first at career, and generally, where do you want to see yourself in 5 to 10 years? So looking at, do you want to stay with the same organization you're with? Do you want to switch? Do you want to end up in a management position? Like, what are your goals and what steps are you taking to achieve those goals? Then we're going to look at financial, which is a huge topic. Actually, our next entire video is going to be dedicated to this, just because there are so many aspects, and starting now is when you want to set up yourself for financial success. And then mental well-being. With this, I'll touch on this a little bit later, but it says take a vacation. We'll talk about that in a minute here. So your career, are you in a position you want to be in? And if not, what steps can you take to change this path? So whenever I start off with the chain that I'm currently with, the first roughly 4 months or so of that job, I was a floater, or a regional support pharmacist is what we call it. So I would go around to different places and cover for vacations, or if someone was out sick or anything like that. I worked in 26 different pharmacies in a period of about 4 months. And then the last maybe 2 months of that, I settled into one of our pharmacies that did not have a regular staff pharmacist, did not have a pharmacy manager. The place was in less than stellar shape whenever I came in. They were about 300 prescriptions behind. Myself and another pharmacist that was also newly licensed, he actually got licensed like 6 days after me. So we were both brand new to this. We both came in and we completely turned the place around. They went from being 300 prescriptions behind to now being consistently like 2 to 3 days ahead on filling. We had a large amount of expired drugs that needed to be sent back and everything like that. And we have the place running as efficiently as it can possibly run. So then after that, I decided, now that this place is working great and I've done all this work to get it working great, I'm going to move to a different pharmacy. So I moved to now my regular full-time pharmacy. So I'm now a staff pharmacist. I've transitioned out of our regional support role, and I've moved into a staff position at a store. They have fantastic technicians. The pharmacy manager I'm working with has been with the company for over 30 years. She's a great asset. So this is the route I wanted to take, and it's been working out great. This same route isn't for everyone, and I would highly suggest that you figure out what you want to do and take steps to get to where you want to be. Along with that same aspect, so I am licensed in Pennsylvania. In a couple days here, I will be licensed in Ohio. Also, I am reciprocating my license also there to cover some different pharmacies and just to give myself some additional flexibility in my life. Now looking at how you integrate it into the workflow. Are you working too much, taking on too much, not doing enough? You want to make sure you are pulling your weight, but at the same time not overwhelming yourself. You're obviously new to the position. You're still learning things, and the expectation is going to be that you're going to get up to that point where you are taking on necessarily like your fair share of stuff. But initially, you don't have to be at that point. It's okay to take it slow, and it's okay to not know all the answers at first. But if you're 6 months or a year into that position, then that situation changes. We want to make sure that we are pulling our weight, but we don't have to do everything in these positions. And lastly, are you pushing yourself to be the best version of yourself? So obviously, whenever we come into these roles, you're going to start off as, the low person on the totem pole per se. But are you pushing yourself to become a better pharmacist and a better person? So some people are great with staying as, a staff pharmacist at a smaller store or a smaller hospital, and that's the route that they want to take, and that's perfectly fine. But if you maybe start off in one of those positions and you decide, hey, I want to move myself up to like a mid-level manager, or I want to end up as a regional leader for my chain, or I want to be an administrative person in my hospital, that's definitely something you can do. But if you don't let people know that and don't take steps to accomplish that, you're going to stay in the same role that you've been in. Now looking at financial, like I said, an entire video is going to be dedicated to this, but this is just a high-level overview to give us an introduction. Do you have a plan on what you want to do for your financial situation? And if so, are you taking steps to meet those goals? And then keep in mind, we want these steps to be realistic. So if you tell yourself, I'm going to pay off $100,000 in student loans in 6 months, it's probably not a realistic goal. If you say, hey, I'm going to set aside $2,000 every month to pay off student loans, that's a realistic goal, and that's something that you could definitely do if you're managing your money correctly. And there's no one-size-fits-all answer for this. Everybody's going to be a different situation, and everyone's going to have different expectations. So with this, if your friends have paid off $40,000 in loans and you haven't, there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. Everyone's path is going to be a little bit different. Now looking at like your living situation. For some people, living with their parents or a family member or a friend for an extended period of time, that is a perfectly fine situation, and that is a fantastic way to save some money, stay close with those individuals, but it's not for everyone. Some people want to be out on their own. They want to be, in their own apartment, their own house, anything like that, and that's definitely a step that you're going to take at some point in life. Big thing is making sure that you do have the money to do that, you're managing your money correctly, and you understand what you are taking on. And lastly, this is really your first time with real money per se, so use it wisely. I personally am someone that doesn't like to spend much money. So would I ever tell you to go out and buy a brand new car on your first paycheck? No, because that's not something that I feel is an efficient use of your money. Just keep in mind that if you have, a vehicle that's, still working and it's able to get you from point A to point B, do you need to buy a new one? Probably no. But again, individual circumstances, I'm not going to tell you the right or wrong way to do anything. And then looking lastly at mental well-being. So are you happy in your daily life? And if not, now is the time to fix that. I've heard a lot of people say, okay, hey, I just need to get through this week. I just need to get through this month, the rest of this year. With that mentality, you're kind of pushing the issue down the road. And what ends up happening is you're not solving the root cause of the problem. So whether it's a job that you don't like or a situation with friends or family that isn't going as perfectly as you would want it to go, address those situations and see what realistic steps can be taken to improve that situation. By no means am I telling you that every single problem in life that you have is going to be solved with a conversation, but it's a good place to start and a good place to figure out what exact path you want to take to lead yourself to a better life. What's your outside of work support system? And like the slide says, these people are critical to your success. So there are going to be days where you're going to have a rough day, whether it's, in a hospital, in industry, in retail, wherever you end up, and you're going to need those people that you can just vent to and just say, hey, today was a really sucky day, and I really just need someone to talk to. And those are the people that you are heavily going to rely on, especially in your first couple months. And make sure to leave your work at home. We want to make sure that once you're at home, you're focusing on what you're doing for yourself. There's obviously going to be small projects and stuff like that are going to come up from time to time, and making sure that you are accomplishing those. But don't be stressing on positions or situations at work that you now have no effect that you now have no control on, and don't let them ruin the rest of your day. And last thing is take your vacation time. You have vacation time for a reason. Use it. Take a small trip, take a couple days off, and just stay at home and do nothing. Whatever you want to do, but make sure you are taking that time for yourself. So we're going to wrap up this video. I hope you have a fantastic day. Check out our next video on setting yourself up for financial success. I've sent this over to several different people, and I have several pharmacists that are now actually following this exact advice. We want to make sure that we are setting you up to utilize your money in the most efficient way you possibly can and setting yourself up for long-term success. Have a great day.